appreciate it, and thank you so much for hosting me. I am Charmaine McGuffey, and I'm running for Sheriff of Hamilton County. I spent 33 years in the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, and in that time, I held ranks of sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and then major in charge of jail and court services. As the major, I was the commander of some 500 uniformed men and women. I was in charge of 100 support staff and 1,400 prisoners in our jail. We have the third largest jail in the state of Ohio, and when I took over that jail, it was rated the worst jail in the state of Ohio. So I'm going to tell you about myself today and why I'm here. About 2 years ago, I was asked to go along with something as the major of jail and court services that I did not agree with. And that something was the practice of not holding officers accountable for excessive use of force, for inappropriate treatment of female inmates, and inappropriate treatment of women who work in the Justice Center. And I found myself faced with the most difficult decision of my career. I was told to be quiet. I was told to go with the flow. I was told to stay in my lane. And just as many of you, I'm sure, have had moments in your life when you have had to decide where you stand ethically and morally on an issue and take a stance on that issue and do what you need to do, that's exactly what I did. And I did not stay quiet. I did not go with the flow. I did not stay in my lane. And unfortunately, it cost me my job. And you know, it was a difficult decision for me to make, but in reality, I like people to know that it was really an easy decision for me to make, and I think you'll understand why when I tell you about who I am, how I came up in the business of the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, and what I'm about and what I want to do. So, I grew up in Price Hill. I had a single parent, my mom, and 2 sisters. And my mom worked very, very hard to support us and keep us in and at least with the basics. And you know, oftentimes when we got up for school in the morning, Mom was already at work. And when we got home from school at night, Mom was still at work. And I like people to know that, you know, the community helped to raise me. Our neighbors helped us. Cincinnati Recreation helped me. They provided activities for me to participate in as a kid and sports, and then I went to Western Hills High School, and there were teachers at Western Hills High School who mentored me, who taught me what could be in my life. And you know, I also have to tell you though that growing up as a young girl in an at-risk neighborhood, I was an at-risk kid. And as that person, as that child, I heard the word can't a lot more than I heard the word could. And it reminds me of a time when I was 14 and I went to my Uncle Nick. And my Uncle Nick was a former Cincinnati police officer, retired. And I was so excited and I said to him, hey, you know what? I've decided. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a police officer. That's what I'm going to do. And Uncle Nick looked at me and he said, I got to tell you, women can't be cops, and cops can't be women. That's the way he put it to me. And I knew right at that very moment that that's exactly what I was going to do. And that is what I set about doing. I got myself to the University of Cincinnati. I earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I joined the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. And in my roles in the Sheriff's Office, as those ranking supervisors, I also, by the way, wore lots of different hats and did lots of different other things as well. I was a lead hostage negotiator, and that's a job that is at 3 in the morning. That's when that job starts, when everybody starts acting crazy out there. And then I was also the commander of the Honor Guard, which are hand-selected men and women who are charged with administrating funerals, presiding over funerals, and parades and pomps and circumstance, and so I'm very, very knowledgeable about that military model and how we honor people who serve in our business, how people have given up their lives and they've worked so hard to make life better for others. And that was what the Honor Guard was all about. And I was the commander of that Honor Guard. I was also the captain of the training academy. And in that role, at one point in time in our sheriff's department, 850 strong, right? I had trained every officer in that department, had interaction with me as a trainer. And that was something that I enjoyed doing. I was a self-defense instructor, a very accomplished self-defense instructor, which is a little unusual for women in policing and in the state of Ohio. And if someday we want to sit around, I can tell you some of those stories. But in general, what I like y'all to know is I've enjoyed every job I've ever had in uniform, every one of them. I don't care what I was doing. I enjoyed putting on that uniform. I have 100 commendations in my file to prove not only how much I enjoyed it, but that I'm good at it. And I think it's important for me to let you know that really what I am is a true reformer. So when I took over that jail, and it was rated the worst jail in the state of Ohio, we immediately, myself and my staff, supervisors, good people that work down there, we got together and we had meetings and we counted things we didn't even know we were supposed to count, and we talked and we wrote, and we got that jail up to a rating in just 3 years as the best jail in the state of Ohio. And that was some work. And you know, I tell you, one of the ways that we did that is we decided that we have to start using reform. We have to start looking at criminal justice reform. Criminal justice reform, by the way, is not on the horizon. It's not 2 days away. It's here. It's now. We have to do it. And when I took that jail over, one of the other things that was my goal, my absolute goal as I thought about it and took that position, I wanted to accelerate us out of 1950. We were in 1950. I mean, you know, I don't know if you guys remember a man named Simon Lease. I worked for him for 26 years. And when I worked in that environment and that era of the sheriff's office, that jail basically had a moat dug around it, and the drawbridge came up. And very few people got in, and very few people got out. And so what I was determined to do, and what I did immediately, is I filled in the moat, I dropped the drawbridge, and I put the welcome sign, right? And I said to people, to everyone, I said, who is out there to help us? We have got to get some people in here, some social service agencies, some people who want to help us with this incarceration problem, because we have a mess in here, quite frankly. And so I created the RAP committee, working to refer appropriate placement. And we met the same time, same place, every week for years. And I'm very proud of the fact that the way that I did this, the only way I knew to do it, because I didn't know who was out there. I was enclosed in the moat, right? I just told people word of mouth. Who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? And people just started coming to the table. And there were times when we had standing room only in those meetings, from social service agencies, from addiction agencies, from people who find work for people who've been incarcerated. I tell you who else I had in those meetings. I had formerly incarcerated people in those meetings. I had former addicts in those meetings. I had homeless people in those meetings. And we sat down and we fashioned out what our plan could be to move this system along. Out of that, out of those efforts, it took years to really build it, because you can't just let anybody in your jail. Just because somebody says, hey, I want to help out. That person has to be vetted. They have to be the right person. You have to know what they're going to do. And so after a year, after 2 years, actually, we created the Women's Heroin Recovery Pod. And then we created the Men's Veterans Pod. And then we created the Men's Exit Pod. And, you know, those are programs that do this. We took like prisoners and put them in like spot, right? And then we targeted services to them that they specifically need. For instance, you know, the veterans, men who are the veterans who come into our jail, typically they're struggling with PTSD issues, they're struggling with housing issues, some addiction issues, and we put services to that group of men so that we could target what they need. And the women the same way, right? You know, we didn't just bring in counseling. Counseling is wonderful, and I believe in it, and you should have it. But you also need to know how to get your driver's license back, how to maybe get your record expunged, where you can go to get a job. You know, we brought in Jobs and Family Services for the women to talk about child care, to talk about how you're going to treat your children when you do get them back, right? And those services were so important to those women. And I tell you, one of the ways that we moved the mark exponentially was we partnered with Cat House, which is the Center for Addiction Treatment, right? And Cat House said, we have peer mentors. We have women who've been there, right? Who are now sober, who want to help you and mentor these women in the addiction pod. And so I got, you know, so we organized it, we got IDs, we did all the things we needed to do, and then I was told by the administrator, wait a minute, whoa, these women can't come in. They can't come in our jail, we're not letting them in. And I said, why? And they said, well, they all have felonies on their records. Well, yeah, they do. They're peer mentors. That's why they're going to come in this jail. They've been there, right? And we brought those peer mentors in, and I tell you, it helps to move the mark. And what we found out is that women, and this is why the program became so successful, because not every woman, not every prisoner is going to take advantage of what you offer them. But the women that did, right? The women that did want that opportunity. When they walked out of that jail, when they were released, instead of walking down to the corner and buying heroin, which they can do, they were calling peer mentors. They were going to a program. They were connected to somebody. And if they wanted to hang on to that line, they could. And we've done the same thing